Alright, YouTube, got another Axis and Allies 1914 video for you. For this one, I wanted to do a second look at the Ottoman Empire. Several countries, including the two that are closest to the Ottomans, Russia and England, go before you if you're the Ottoman player, and you're going to have to deal with that. So we'll look at some common moves, some normal things you're probably going to have to deal with, and just consider some overarching strategies and ideas that you'll want to keep in mind. So, a couple things. If nothing else, England is likely to move on Transjordan, and they also are likely to have dropped off somebody in Arabia, threatening your basically all three of your territories are threatened. It's possible they might take out Transjordan. If they don't, it's still at least going to be contested. But if they do, then Smyrna is threatened, as well as Syrian Desert. When they drop off in Arabia, Syrian Desert will be threatened that way, as well as Mesopotamia. So at a minimum, that's something you're going to have to deal with. Now, Russia may, on its turn, move down and attack Mesopotamia, in which case the British might use this transport to drop off here, while this transport, they might use that one to drop off in Arabia. So you could also be facing an issue in Mesopotamia. So you could be dealing with quite a situation on your hands. If at all possible, you will want to move one infantry up into Bulgaria just to get that extra production and get those extra units. If you can't, you can't, but you'll want to very strongly consider that. If the Russians did not attack your navy here on their turn, or if they did and you survived, you could either leave your navy there to try and protect your coast, because you might have somebody like Italy or maybe France on its turn or on France's second turn, Italy's first turn, because Italy goes after you, might try and sneak up here and do something annoying with a transport if your navy is gone. And you are really in danger of economic, not political, collapse because of how much you could potentially be threatened. 5 production along here, 6, 7, 8, well, you're in economic collapse right there. And that's obviously not something you want to do or want to have happen. It's possible that you could move your ships out here to try and take out this British destroyer or British cruiser and transport. Because that opens you up along the north here, I don't recommend that move. I don't think that's a very good option, especially when the loss of the wrong territory at this point could knock you into economic collapse. Oh, and let me correct a previous statement. On your first turn, you're likely to be down 4 production. Syrian Desert's just going to be threatened. Sorry about that. But still, even so, down 4 production, 5, 6, 7, you're now in economic collapse. If somehow the Allies manage to just land one guy here and one guy here, if they're both defenseless because of how you positioned your troops, well, you're definitely in economic, and you could be in political collapse if both of those things happen. And that's something you want to be very careful about. It's important that you want to make sure that the British get bogged down in Transjordan, and that you can test that on your turn. That way they can't continue to move up and threaten more territories. It's important that Mesopotamia be contested, because if that falls into Allies' hands, now Syrian Desert and Ankara can both be threatened. So you want to try and bottleneck the British here, if possible, so they can't expand. Bottleneck the Allies here in Mesopotamia so they can't threaten multiple. And you might find yourself in a position where you just have to sacrifice the Syrian Desert. It's only worth 1 production, and you are going to want to swing back around and either contest it or take it back at your next opportunity. It should just be the units that England dropped off in Arabia, and then the extra units for the leaning neutral that they get that you have to deal with. And you can afford, more than likely, to to lose that one production for a turn while you focus elsewhere and then swing around and take it. That is much more preferred than reinforcing here. Either England attacks and contests it, or England doesn't attack at all, but then you lose other territories and go to an economic or political collapse. That is something, especially on the first probably 2 turns, that the Ottoman player really needs to pay so close attention to, because with the number of transports, British transport, Italian transport, potentially French transports coming in, that if you're not careful, there are all sorts of coastal line territories that your enemies could exploit if they're defenseless, and either take or contest. And remember, even a contested territory is lost production for you and counts towards economic or political collapse. So those are the things. It's really easy to lose track, especially when you have so much that you need to counter on your first turn, but you definitely want to make sure that you defend where, if at all practical, and if you can get that Bulgarian production extra units, good. You can either threaten Russia, help the Central Powers along this front, or you can withdraw some and help down here. That is hugely helpful as long as you can get it without risking economic or political collapse. So that's my advice as the Ottomans. You aren't really going to coordinate as much with, or directly anyway, as much with Austria-Hungary and Germany, just because Russia kind of blocks you to a degree, and you're going to have your hands full for the first 2 turns or so for sure, unless the Allies completely ignore you, which is possible, but that's unlikely. You shouldn't count on that happening. It's a nice present. Just think of it as a Christmas present, if you will, if that should happen, but you can't count on that. So that is what I would do. That's what I would recommend keeping in mind as the Ottomans. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to have some more coming up here quickly.